Well, hello everyone, welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement. On today's video, we're going to be working on a VCR. I'm doing some maintenance on this thing. This is a Panasonic PVVS4821 from September 2003. So this thing is 21 years old. It's a Super VHS VCR. This was pretty much end of the road for Panasonic when they were making VCRs. This one I think is made in Malaysia. And Panasonic at this point, when they were making VCRs, all of these VCRs are basically the same chassis inside. I mean, this thing has Super VHS and some additional features on it like Super VHS ET, where I can record Super VHS on the regular tapes and stuff like that. But I have, I think, two other Panasonic VCRs of the same vintage as this. And while the front panel looks a little bit different, obviously it's got the little blue stripe on the door here and whatnot, the insides of the thing are basically identical. Obviously, they swap around a few chips and jumper links and whatever to enable the extra features that this thing has versus the lower models, which don't have Super VHS or whatnot. But otherwise, things are very, very similar. Now, the reason for this video is I need to do some maintenance on this particular VCR. I like this VCR because it's a late model. These are generally pretty reliable. They offer good picture quality, and you'll see when we open this up. Oh, the camera just cut out there. That's kind of weird. You'll see when we open this thing up, it's very simplistic inside. Not a lot of things to go wrong, which is really good. That means when you find these, they often work. But it does seem like there are some Achilles heels with these VCRs, and I think I have at least two of these that have a particular fault that's intermittent, which means it's kind of hard to figure out, where you go to play a tape and the thing will play for like a second and then just stop. And this Super VHS VCR was my primary VCR that I usually just sort of kept on the TV over there if I ever needed to play a tape or record something really quick for tests or whatever. But it got to the point where it was so unreliable that it would do that thing where it would play for a second and then just stop, and it would actually stop and shut off. It wasn't just stopping normally. So when it shuts off like that when you hit play, you know there's a fault of some kind, and the microcontroller that's in here that controls the whole show says, uh-oh, something is very wrong, and I'm just shutting down just to protect the tape and whatever. You turn it back on, and you'd be able to eject the tape without any issue. But if you hit play again, it would just also do the same thing. So that's what I want to try to do in this video, is figure out exactly what's wrong. So just so you can see the front of this thing, you got some controls here, and the play button kind of sticks because it's little plastic levers and stuff that just push buttons on the PCB. Everything is super cheaply made on this VCR. But because of that, it means it's super duper simplistic, and it actually, well, ends up in a relatively reliable VCR. So we have front AV inputs, VCR TV, you know, all the usual junk. You can see here we have a Super VHS LED that can light up. We have a Super VHS ET light. This has some kind of commercial advance and movie advance feature. I never owned one of these VCRs back in the day, and I think what that feature does is after you've recorded something off television with the timer, is it actually goes back and like rewinds the tape to the beginning of the recording, and it scans through everything you've recorded and actually puts little index markers on the tape to indicate where the commercials are. So when you're playing back the tape, it can skip over the commercials automatically for you. It like fast forwards through them. I think the movie advance feature is something similar, where we'll automatically skip over all those warnings and previews that are at the beginning of movies, and we'll just start playing right at the beginning of the movie. My assumption is it has to scan the movie, the commercial movie, and record a little marker onto the tape, which is kind of interesting because if you're using a commercial tape, the right protect tab is already broken out. So you figure it can't do that. But I would imagine it's probably able to write those markers on the tape in a way that doesn't affect the video or the audio or any other part of it. And then that way, in the future, when you put that same tape in there, you'll be able to skip over those intros. Back of the machine is super duper basic. There's that sticker that has the info model number stuff. And then over here, you have the AV inputs and the RF inputs. Now, because it's a Super VHS, it has S-video as well. But because this chassis is used like in a million other of these Panasonic VCRs from the same time period as this, I think this Super VHS stuff is an extra little board they've added on. Since the normal one has PCB mount connectors for this stuff, but the S-video jack has a little extra board. So that's one thing that's different. On the bottom of the VCR, there is a metal plate here, which basically is shielding. If you take this thing off, which you can slide it off, I think by pushing these little tabs here, the only thing you'll see under there is just plastic. I don't think there's any kind of access to the mechanism. Now this particular mechanism, which I've already taken the screws out incidentally, it only has one belt. So if we pop this off, there's the inside of the VCR, and everything is just like super duper cost reduced. There's that extra board I was talking about for the S-video jacks. My other Panasonic VCRs, they use the same chassis. The front looks different. I mean, this actually has, you know, it doesn't look terrible, but the other ones look pretty terrible on the front. You know, just swoopy early 2000s design. Switch mode power supply over here, I think they're pretty reliable. None of the ones I've ever worked on have any issues. When it comes to loading and unloading tapes though, there isn't even any kind of belts. It's all completely gear driven. That means that, well, there's nothing really to wear out there, and there's just that one belt on the underside. And it's pretty simplistic from that standpoint. So maintenance is pretty easy with this, I think. Now the problem that I said this thing is happening, when you put a tape in there, it plays for a moment and then it just stops. That problem, unfortunately, is intermittent, and I did test this right before starting this video, and of course it's not doing it right now, and I can't get it to do it. But I actually had this thing out of service, and it was in the other room, kind of just stashed with some other VCRs, because every time I went to use it, when it was plugged in over here, it never could play any tapes, and that's kind of useless. So I broke it out to do this repair, and unfortunately, well, it's not exhibiting the fault. So I'm calling this video a maintenance video and not an actual repair, because I can't even demonstrate the fault. Now, I had this VCR set aside for at least a couple years now. That problem got worse and worse to the point where I took it out of service, and I thought, well, I'll look into that at some point in the future. Well, the other day I had YouTube up on my TV and I was just relaxing watching some videos, and a video from 12 Volt Vids came up. If you haven't seen 12 Volt Vids, of course I'll link to the channel below and the video that I saw that actually 12 Volt Vids was repairing of Panasonic VCRs, similar vintage to this. It wasn't a Super VHS VCR, but when I saw the inside I said, well, it looks exactly like the Super VHS VCR. So I think the faults that were being fixed on that VCR are probably the same as this. The problem that one was exhibiting was what this one was doing. Playing a tape would play for a second, the VCR would shut off, fast forwarding also didn't work. And it turned out the entire issue with the one that 12 Volt Vids was working on was cracked solder joints on the underside of the PCB that go to, I think, the pickup or take-up sensor. It's this wheel right here that turns when you're playing a tape as the tape moves from the reel on the left to the reel on the right. The VCR couldn't sense that it was actually moving, so it just thought there was a jam. And even though it was playing the tape, you could see a picture, sound, everything was working, it would just stop. Now, because it's been a little while since this VCR was acting up, I can't remember if the symptoms were exactly the same as what 12 Volt Vids VCR was doing, but I'm pretty sure we're gonna find that's probably the issue with this VCR. And I'm hoping when we take this thing apart, because I've never taken it out and looked at the bottom side of the PCB, that we're gonna see a bunch of broken solder joints on all the various sensors that are around the VCR. Now, I have a caveat that I'm a total novice at repairing VCRs here, so if I can get this thing apart and get this thing into a better working state, then I think anyone can. Early VCRs are really complicated with tons of boards and wires running everywhere, and you have to flip boards out and stuff. Obviously, these later ones are way easier to work on. So if you're looking to buy a VCR just to copy some tapes off of, I kind of recommend these late model Panasonic simply because they are relatively easy to work on, and I think they're very simplistic. So there's a good chance they're going to work. And potentially you might have a bad cap here or there in the power supply, although I've never had that personally. Or of course, you might have these bad solder joints like I mentioned. Now there is one other fault that this VCR exhibits as well, and it's that when you put a tape in and you rewind it, you actually get this horrible like noise. And you know what, we should put this in and then I can demonstrate that. So I'm going to plug in the power here. Now, of course, while this thing is plugged in the mains, do not touch anything in the whole switch mode power supply area over here. It says hot right there. That is dangerous. So just don't put your hand there. So get this in here. Now this VCR, I could tell, actually did have a good amount of use. You can see on the front door there, it's a little bit worn where tapes were inserted and pulled out frequently. And also when I was testing this originally and I pulled the cover off, I noticed that these two labels were floating around inside, which obviously came from the previous owner of this thing. CBS Sundays, October 12th plus 17th, 2004. So that would have been only a year after this thing was sold. And then let's see what this says. I can't quite make what this one says here, so I don't know, CPCS as whatever. So yeah, these were floating around on the inside. They obviously peeled off a tape. Also, I have cleaned this thing in the past, but I do recall when I did open it up, you know, there was a bit of gunk and stuff in here where the transports and whatnot slide around a lot. So, you know, you could tell this thing definitely got some use. All right, so fast forward is working right now. This is what wasn't working in the past. Sounds okay. Let's hit stop here on the front. Oh, you heard a little second of the noise that I'm talking about. Now we hit rewind. Let's see if it makes the noise, the horrible noise. There it is. There's the noise. Now, if I can talk over this horrible noise, let's just let this rewind all the way. I'm pretty sure, I'm 99% positive that it's this wheel here, the take-up wheel, right? It's being taken up as you hit play. The reason why I think that is I fast forward the tape all the way to the end and then I rewound it all the way to the end. And when you begin the rewind process, this roll here is full of tape, so it's actually spinning slower than this one. And that shrieky noise, which is obviously like a lack of lubrication or something, I think, in the take-up wheel, is lower pitched. And as the tape rewinds and the tape moves to this side, this wheel starts spinning faster and faster, right? Because the diameter is getting smaller and smaller. And that shrieky noise gets higher and higher pitched as this roll is going faster and faster. So I think that's the issue here. Let's get the tape out of here and let's pull the power out so the plug is out. Okay, so let's zoom in here. I just want to try to identify for sure that this is the issue. So the take-up wheel here has this brake applied right now. So if I turn it, it doesn't really turn very well because that brake is pushing against it. So I'm just going to move that out of the way. There we go. It kind of hooked onto something. And let's see what happens if I spin this. Yeah, so that's obviously a problem right there. Shouldn't make that kind of noise. Now I wonder if I could take some of this bearing oil here and just put a drop down onto the little spindle there. You can just see if I move that. You see that little spindle there? I'm just gonna put one drop there, like that. And let's see if I spin this now. Does that do anything? I might have to try to figure out how this comes off and lubricate. There's obviously a shaft that goes all the way through it, all the way to the other side. I just need to figure out how that works exactly. Because that didn't do anything. All right, well, that problem is not the big problem with this. It's definitely whatever's going on with the sensors. So just a reminder, the plug is undone here just to be safe. And I think I'm just gonna start taking out all the screws here. I don't exactly know which ones I need to take out to get this thing out. But I know watching the video on 12 volt vids about this VCR is that the metal chassis here, this mechanism, is actually soldered onto the board using some ribbon cables, these ribbon cables right here. On, I think, earlier VCRs, you could remove this metal part of the chassis. It would have connectors or cables you could unplug and you could pull it out and then have access to the entire PCB. I think they're a joined unit on this thing. So you just got to take out all the screws. So that just comes out like so. There's this grounding strap right here that had another screw. Because the entire PCB is coming out along with the mechanism, because they are joined together, you do have to take out all the screws. So there was one by the power supply, there's one right here by the tuner. Let's see where else there are. Looks like there's one that could go there that's not installed. That was not me. Same right over here, not there. I'm pretty sure there are two in the front here. See these holes here that go through this top cover? You need to move the tape basket out of the way so you can get to those screws. And the way you do that is, see this little plastic thing? You just move it forward and then the whole thing slides like that. It's very much a Panasonic thing. And there's the screw right there. The way you move the basket forward is gonna be different from one VCR to another. Sometimes there's one of those little plastic clips on both sides. Like there's one here and one there. So just probably varies from one VCR to another. Okay, I think that's pretty much everything out. We do have to get the front panel off here though. So let's try to do this without breaking it, because it's all super cheaply made. So you just have to lift those clips here, and then there's gonna be some on the bottom as well. And then there's definitely some on the bottom here. Whoop, there we go. Little piece of plastic came out there, so I broke something. This is that button mechanism I was talking about. So when you hit the play button, for instance, it has this whole complicated lever assembly. It's all very cheap, but I wonder if I had an option on some to have an S-video jack on the front. That was not done on this one. Okay, well, already this thing is kind of falling out because I took all the screws out. Oh, what's this? More labels. Oh, that's funny. Let's see what they say. We have All in the Family from 2005. So that was a rerun because that's an old show, I guess. And was this Princess Diana tape or something? Interesting. Looking at the front of this thing, you can see this video input thing here. Look, there's a button for some models that actually allows you to turn SVHS ET on and off. On this VCR, you have to do it through the menu. I wonder if that's something I can just install and then drill a hole. That'd be kind of handy to have a button in case I don't have the remote handy. But what we can see is before we can lift out the PCB here, this is all clipped in here. So I'm probably gonna have to somehow figure out how to bend this out. Okay, there's just a few little clips there. Let me just pull that forward. And I think I can just lift this out. There it is. There's that SVHS ET button. I should probably see if I could just find a little switch to install there. Same switches as these. I'm not sure I have any of those in stock. Little 2-pin ones. Most of the ones I have are all 4-pin ones. As for the rest of this thing, it does not have vacuum fluorescent. It just has a very cheap LED display there. There's the IR receiver, some more buttons on the main board, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, as for the back of this, looks like, how does this work exactly? Probably gonna have to get those jacks off. I don't see how this little board is actually attached. Oh, okay, there's a screw there. All right, let me get that out. I think I can just lift this little part up here. There we go, and then that should let me pull this out, maybe. Well, what's kind of interesting is that little cap came off. Let's see if I can get this on camera. It looks like there's a bent pin, and it was not me. See that? That was not me. I've never taken this thing apart, so I don't know what the deal is with that. It's pretty shoddy. Interesting is they call this S-Photo instead of S-Video for whatever reason. Anyhow, the little S-Video board has 2 screws now that I can see them. So let's just get these out. I'm definitely not going to be able to pull the PCB out without taking these out. So we'll get these 2 screws loose. It's probably going to be annoying to try to get these back in, these little screws here. But with them out, this little board should... Oh, there's one more screw in the bottom. And the weird thing is the bottom screw, which is really difficult to see, it's right there. It's actually blocked by the capacitor there. So I think I really do need to pull this out somehow. Come on out. Wow, that refuses to budge. All right, well, let me try to pull this out and see how this works. Okay, so everything is sort of loose. Now you might be tempted to try to lift the metal mechanism here, but as I said, it's actually soldered down there. See those ribbon cables? Those do not disconnect, at least as far as I'm aware they don't. So I think you have to pull the whole PCB out all as one. I would have thought this would just pull out, but I don't want to pull too hard, and it's really not budging. All I can think to do is try to pull this out. You know what? I just realized this whole back thing comes out here, like it slides up or something. So you don't actually have to take that off. Let's see how I can get this out of here, like that. Okay, well, there we go. That was easier than I should have done. So here's the bottom, as I mentioned. You can get to some stuff, I guess, if you take that plate off, but you can't get to everything. So it's just easier to take everything out. So now the whole thing is out of the case. I think we can lift up this part here. Now there's a bunch of sensors that stick through it, and that's going to kind of prevent it from lifting up. Plus there's some connectors on the board. There we go. You just have to kind of lift it over, and then we have to rotate it like this. And you can see here what I was talking about. Everything is just soldered right on. Kind of lame, but that is just how they did it. But you can see here, there's the one belt. I'm going to take it off and give it a little bit of a clean. So just take it off like that. This thing here is called the mode switch, and this can get dirty and actually cause the VCR to stop working properly as well. And there are plenty of videos on 12-volt vids about taking this apart and cleaning it. If you do take it apart when you put it back together, there we go. I wanted to point out that there's an arrow right there and right there, and you need to make sure those are lined up. Now, interesting is look at this service position here. If you like turn this over here to that position, does it go into service mode? Well, if you line the arrow up, I don't know exactly. Now there's a little detent right there too. It actually kind of, when you turn it, it kind of wants to stop in that position. That's the position you need to have it in to put this thing back together. Anyhow, with this thing apart, we can kind of see a lot of the sensors that I'm talking about. So This here and this have to do with like sensing if the tape is in. Plus, if you've rewound the tape all the way to the beginning, there's a clear leader. And I think there's an LED on here and it gets picked up by this sensor and that kind of shines a beam through there. And then here's the take-up reel and the S reel. S? I don't know, whatever that stands for. That's the, the tape that it's unreeling to go through the entire mechanism. So with these two sensors, I think this one is the one that's not working properly because I think, as I said, it will play a little bit and then stop, and that's where the microcontroller just can't sense movement of the tape. And then you also have a connector here and a connector there that connect to the entire mechanism, right, that I've lifted off. So you need to make sure that those are good. Plus we have a little switch right here, and this is probably the tape down switch. So we have to make sure that that's good. And it looks like we have another switch right here. I think this also senses if a tape is in. So we gotta check all this stuff. Just make sure all the solder joints are actually good. So let's flip this thing over here and just carefully lay it down on the desk because it's resting on a bunch of those sensors and stuff now. So there's the take-up reel sensor, and let me get a little magnifier and see if I can see a bad solder joint. Yeah, it's gonna be impossible to see on the camera, but using this little loop here, I definitely see what looks like a bit of a crack around one of the joints here. Now the crack appears to be at the very bottom of this one right here. And one of the issues is because it actually looks like it's the joint between the solder and the actual trace or the pad there. I'm actually gonna use my little engraving tool to just eat away a little bit at it so I can expose some of the copper. So when I put some new solder on there, it has a better foothold, or it has a better way to flow onto the copper to enhance the connections. I think that might be where it's broken. Might as well do the same on the S reel here. Now, when you're working on these VCRs, one of the other problems with these types of boards is that they can get cracks in them if the VCR was dropped. And that can also cause you a big headache. You have to kind of look very carefully for any cracks in the board. If you're having like weird, massive problems, often it can be that. And I've had a VCR before where I had to repair the crack in the board, like by adding some bodge wires and stuff like that. So I don't think that's what's going on here because it just really seems like it's a take-up problem. But on the other hand, because it's not even having the issue right now, I can't be 100% sure. So we'll just reflow all 4 of the joints that are on here. And I'm just gonna do the same on all the other things. This says S tab, so that's obviously the recording tab that you break off on the VCR. So this is how the VCR is able to sense that. If this weren't working, the problem would be clearly that you wouldn't be able to record on a tape. Or maybe you'd be able to record on the tape all the time. Here's the LED in the middle. This one looks like it was hand soldered already, so that's probably fine. I see flux residue on there. Here's the mode switch right there. So I think with this VCR, if you need to work on the mode switch, you need to desolder it from the board altogether. I don't think I've had any issues with the mode switch, so I'm not going to do anything, but I am just going to reflow it real quick. Here's one of the end stop sensors or something like that. That one looked like I had a cracked solder joint on it, actually. Could have been that too. Maybe the VCR thought that it was always at the end of the tape. That's interesting. Hadn't thought about that one. And then there's another one right over here. This one as well. All right, well, I think that should do it for reflowing those joints. Let's try to flip this thing back over here carefully. Now, I never had any issues with the S-video connection into this VCR, but this pin here is clearly not in the connector properly. So I'm just gonna try to bend this in. Maybe that pin doesn't do anything. Not totally sure. All right, now there's a good connection. I don't know what that did, if it was just an extra ground or something. It was absolutely not in there before. What I can do is put back in these screws before I forget. Okay, everything is back in. So taking a look at the PCB here, by the way, what I like about it is it doesn't have any surface mount caps. We don't have the caps like on the Macintosh that are gonna go bad and ruin everything. Obviously we have a ton of caps though, so if you did have to recap this, I hope that'd be very tedious and long, but still doable. Single-sided boards, very easy to do the recapping process. Definitely a little bit of gunk on the board here from the years of use. Little crystal oscillator there, probably for keeping time. These are the two connectors that go up to the chassis. So this is the main motor on the chassis, and this is a brushless design. You can see the coils under there. So that is obviously driven from something on the board here, or maybe there's an IC. There's actually an IC right here. I know you can't really see it very well, but since this is all attached, I can't easily move it. But yeah, this will be the motor speed controller for going different speeds, forwards and back. Everything looks good there. Now, when it comes to that noisy take-up wheel, it's over here. And when I turn it, it also turns this gear here. And I wonder if that's our issue right there. We need to put a little bit of lubricant on this gear, and that'll stop that terrible noise. Because this is a plastic gear, I'm gonna use some silicone lubricant here, liquid stuff. I need to get a little bit more. I need to tilt this back a little bit more, just to try to get some lubricant in there. Okay, I just put a little drop on there. What I'm gonna need to do is move that little brake out of the way. Yep, that did the trick. It's nice and quiet now. So it was that shaft that needed to be lubricated. I may as well add a drop to this one over here, which is gonna be for reverse. It's definitely got a little gunk on there. It's just a little drop, it's all you need, not too much. And yep, that looks all good. I'm gonna try to clean that though. I see a bunch of gunk on it. Oh, I need to clean my belt as well. The way I like to clean these belts is not to use IPA, but to actually use Windex. So I'm gonna spray a little bit of Windex on a cloth here, like that, and then just run this through here. This belt is soft though. I don't feel any issues with it. I'm sure it's just fine. But a little bit of gunk came off, not too bad. Now, unfortunately, you can see all this stuff is plastic. So if any of these gears break down here, you're in trouble. Luckily, these Panasonic VCRs are ubiquitous. And like I said, all these late model ones are the same. So you could definitely mix and match these parts around if you want to try to fix one of these like better Super VHS VCRs like this, which I would definitely try to do. If this thing were broken, I would cannibalize off another VCR, another lesser one of these Panasonics, by stealing those parts to fix one of these. I'm just cleaning up the little wheel here too. A little bit of gunk was in there, nothing too bad. All right, so this belt, now that I cleaned it, it's nice and grippy. So I'll just feed it in there. And you do want to make sure you do not have a twist in it. Roll it on there, and I do have a twist. I know it's very hard to see. So we're just gonna fix the twist. There we go, twist is fixed. Looks good. That looks good. Now let's try to get this chassis back down onto the main board here. Now all of these sensors and things need to be going through the holes in the chassis, and it could be a little bit of a difficult pain. So you can be helped if you tilt it up like this, and you can try to look at what you're doing to make sure you get all of those things into the right spots. There we go. I think I got it. Let's play this back down. But besides those things going through the holes, we also have those connectors, and you need to make sure those are all the way in. That one is now. Yeah, I think it's all in there. Yep, it's pretty much sitting on there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna power this up when it's out of the chassis like this, and we're just gonna make sure that it is working. Because I gotta make sure I have the mode switch in the right position, all that kind of stuff. So here we go. Okay, it's powered up right now. I have a display on here. Let's push the power button, which is where exactly? Oh, power button is on this little board here, which we don't have connected. So unplug the power again. Yeah, power button was on here, I forgot. So get that into position like that. Plug this back in. Okay. Power. See if this can, oops, that was my bad. So to load a tape, or to fake load a tape, you just have to make it seem like you're putting a tape in there. Here we go. Okay, take up reel is spinning here. Now, what's interesting about this design is even though there was a sensor on this reel here, it doesn't seem to matter. It still plays even when this is not turning. I don't know what the deal is with that, but that's just the way this is. So stop button's underneath here. Let's try fast forward. I don't want to hear any more of that screechy noise. It's not really going quickly without a tape in there because I think it's looking for the delta speed of this thing here. So let's hit stop. And we'll put in a tape. You know what? I have a junk tape to put in here. So let's hit eject, get this back into the up position. There we go. This ribbon cable is actually pushing on the tape there. It's kind of funny. It's pretty stiff though, so I just move it out of the way. Okay, so it's playing. Let's hit stop and fast forward. It's going to go into fast mode here. Sounds good. Stop. Okay, now I'll hit rewind. Awesome. No more screeching. At least not yet. Oh no, it's doing it a little bit. I can see this tape is a bit sticky, looks like. I'm just going to fast forward the tape more so we can rewind more. I just want to make sure that that noise doesn't come back before I put this all back together. I love how fast these Panasonics are at actually fast forwarding. Let's plug in the video connector here. And there we have a video signal from the VCR. We hit play. I think there's nothing on this tape. I erased it. Yeah, it's blank here. All right, that was enough. Let's rewind. Oh, I hit eject accidentally. Oh, I heard a little bit of the noise there. Check record tab. Oh, I think I pushed the record button, not eject. Oops. Well, at least we know that's working. Play. Stop. Rewind. Yeah, I thought I heard a little bit of the shrieky noise from the gear not being lubricated, but let's see what happens if we rewind fast now. Oh yeah, okay. That is way better than it was. So if you have that shrieky noise on your Panasonic VCR, you gotta take it all apart just to put a drop of lubricant, and I use this silicone lubricant, on those two gears that go to the take up and the supply. Oh, S reel, supply reel. People probably were typing that in their keyboards. Supply reel is a supply reel. No more shrieking. Awesome. Now, as far as the problem with this thing stopping, I can't even validate that what I did fixed it because I used this yesterday and the VCR has not misbehaved. Super aggravating. Let's get this junk tape out of here. And put in my good Fuji tape, one that is new. I actually opened this yesterday and I recorded onto it, so it's, you know, it doesn't have any issues, it's not worn out at all. We hit play. I just recorded some regular VHS stuff onto here. Good, we have a picture, and even though the shielding is all missing here, which obviously interference when you have the cover off and the bottom off. Oh, it's cool. See, this VCR actually writes, that was yesterday. It saves onto the tape when you recorded it and what input it came from as well, which is frankly pretty freaking awesome. All right. This is just one of my videos. I didn't want to have any copyright issues, so that's what I ended up doing. Let's switch here. Yeah, it looks good. Let me connect up the speakers here so we can hear if there is sound. All right, audio's connected. With it, I completely love this set, and I really wish it were something that I could keep. Well, maybe while this is playing, let me bend the board a little bit and make sure we don't have any issues with the picture coming and going. Obviously, stay away from the high voltage section there. Seems fine. Cool. I don't think there's anything else to really do with this thing. This VCR has always just worked fine, except for that one issue. And of course, the screechy noise on the rewind. It seems like I fixed that issue, and then hopefully I fixed that random stopping issue. Last thing I want to do is clean the heads while we have this apart, although I could do this at any point. So with VHS, the head spins counterclockwise or anti-clockwise, depending on where you're from. So when you're cleaning it, you just need to make sure that you turn it in the same way. I use the method for cleaning that 12 Volt Vids uses, a piece of paper. You spray some 99% IPA onto it, like that. And then you just hold this with your finger up against the head, and you turn the head in the direction that it normally turns, counterclockwise, like so. Let's see if we get anything off there. Nah, it's pretty clean. There's a little bit that came off there. See those black marks there? If the head's really dirty, you'll get a whole bunch of stuff that comes off, but it looks pretty good. yeah, if you just hold your finger, you can feel the heads moving under the paper. And that is, I guess, doing the trick. I don't know. Oh, look at that. A bit more came off. It could have been from this tape. I've actually cleaned this VCR before, the heads that is. Playing these old tapes sheds magnetic material all over the heads and stuff. And, oops. And if you're servicing the VCR, you just need to clean the heads like I mentioned. You just turn this counterclockwise. Clean the erase head. You could use a little cotton bud or something with some IPA on it. Also clean the linear audio head and the control track. That's that head right there. Plus you want to clean the little pegs and stuff that are around here, the guides and things. Plus you want to try to get the capstan clean if there's any schmutz on that. And then this roller here, you want to clean this. Now I like to clean that using Windex again and not IPA, but obviously you could do it however you want to clean it. It's rubber, so whatever you want to do to try to keep it from getting degraded. And I worry that 99% IPA is just too much to put on there. Looking at the bottom of the VCR, this metal plate here, obviously, if you take this off, you do not have any access to those gears, the ones that need the lubricant. That's in this area here. And I think mainly this is under like the video circuitry side of the board, and this is shielded. There's a little metal clip that goes from here onto the top part of the chassis and onto the upper cover. So that just shields the whole video circuitry and the head and the amplifiers and whatever from any external interference. So please remember when working on these that these PCBs are very fragile. They're thin and they crack easily. So you just have to be pretty careful when you're trying to reassemble this whole thing. Don't know where the best place to hold is. Oh, there we go. Is that actually in? Nope, that's not in properly. There we go, that is in. Yep, there we go. There's a little clip right there, so you just gotta make sure that that's on. Okay, I think this thing is in there. That was easy. Let's get this little front PCB on here. Oh, let's do the Super VHS ET button. Yeah. I have a little selection of buttons here, but I am positive that they are all the wrong type. Yeah, these are right angle ones. That's not gonna work. Right angle. And these ones seem like 4-pin style, as do these. Let's just see if I can bodge one of these in. And I mean, I don't even have the button for the front panel, so I'd have to drill a hole anyways. You can see that this switch here has 4 contacts. You know, I am tempted just to steal this VCR TV button. I never, ever, ever use that. It'd be cool if that worked instead. So I'm just gonna reflow the VCR TV button there first. And we'll try to get that cleaned off with this braid here. There we go, it just popped out. Just clean out the holes over here. And there's the button in the spot. Just bend these pins back over. Now it's possible that there's a missing jumper link somewhere else on here that would prevent this from working. And it goes without saying that there is not a button on the front panel, but I'm fine with drilling a hole in it and just poking this as necessary. I don't always have the remote control handy. And the problem is with the ET mode is if it's turned on and you record anything, you got to go into the menus to turn it off right now on this VCR, and that's just kind of dumb. Is there a way to adapt this to make that work? These 2 pins are shorted together. They're joined internally, and these 2 are joined internally. When you push the buttons, it connects, whoops, it connects those 2 together. You can just use your multimeter to kind of figure that out. And that means that we could try to mount this at a diagonal like that. Well, it's in here, but it's also much higher profile than the adjacent buttons. So I don't really think that's gonna work. It all depends on this front panel. This thing can bend. It really depends on this. And see, this thing, when you push it, that's the button in question, it can't move more towards the front because it has a stop right there. So I don't think I can even go with the different button. I think what I can do is we'll just leave this off because I don't care. I'm never gonna use VCR TV. Okay, time to reassemble this VCR. Get this connected back up again. This just clips into there like so. This does have an IR blaster right here. You might have noticed that on the front panel. It has the ability to control your cable box, I think. And it would do it with this little IR transmitter there. I'm just looking, would it be fun to change the colors of some of these LEDs? These are IR transmitter LEDs, by the way, as well. Goes through this hole right there. But yeah, Super VHS and Super VHS ET are these 2. And this thing doesn't really have a power LED except for like that. That's the power LED. It's so junk, really. Really bare minimum, this VCR. I wonder how much this thing cost when it was new. Let's get this back together. This is that little metal clip here. that holds the, or grounds the main chassis to that bottom plate. Don't forget to put that in. If you do, you could have interference problems. Now, I don't know when Panasonic changed this chassis to this super cheap version here. I've seen videos of ones from the late 90s and they look different internally. Similar, but different. They have like these hybrid modules back here that go bad apparently, and other issues. So I'm not sure the exact cutoff of when they went to this particular design. But as I mentioned, I have, I think, 3 VCRs that look like this on the inside, and they're all from the 2000s, I think. All right, all the screws are back in. So this is actually held into the chassis. Now, what we haven't seen, does that Super VHS ET button even do anything? Maybe I should have tested it before I put the screws in, maybe. Okay, there we go. So power button is here. Okay, it's on. There's like a red light right there. Super VHS ET. So far, it does nothing. Lame. But it could be that we need to have a tape in there before we'll be able to do anything. So let's get the tape in here. Okay, one of these lights here is, nah, it doesn't work. Oh well, I disabled that for no reason. I don't really notice any missing jumper links on here except for 2 there. But, you know, I should have looked more closely. You know what, I can still pull that out. Let's pull that out. Is there anything that I missed? So there's the button. One of the traces just goes right down here to the main board. And this one is paralleled with other stuff. Okay, so it's something on the main board that doesn't allow that to actually work. That's freaking lame. I suppose I should do the right thing and switch this back to the original position. So I've restored operation of the VCR. I mean, half of me, or part of me, really doesn't care. But, you know, I guess I should do it since the button doesn't do anything in its current position. Let's check out the menu here. So there's the SVHS mode. It's just set to off. Let's turn the ET mode on before I move that button. And we can see that the green light is on here. It's a little hard to see, but it is lit right here. And this button, yeah, that button does nothing. It's pretty ridiculous that they have a pad for that and they've like disabled it in the microcontroller. But I suppose they had to do that in case you had like any interference picked up on a trace. You didn't want to just turn off and on randomly. Let's hit play. Of course, ET light will turn off as soon as it starts to play. Yeah, it turned off because this tape is not recorded in ET mode. And obviously pushing it here does nothing. I thought I could hack this thing and do something and improve it in some way, but no. Panasonic forbid me. So pull the power out. I'll fix this button here. All right, the button is back in the original position. Will it work? Maybe it got damaged from the heat of the soldering. That is quite possible. So I'll just pop this back into place here. Let's plug the power back in. Power on the machine. Okay. And the button still works. So the VCR light there turns off and on. So cool. Okay. Anyhow, let's just make sure real quick that this thing is working. Play is this one. There we go. Looks good. Ignore that little like curvature at the top. That's just the retro tank. And I have it set currently to capture the entire frame. There's no cropping going on at all. And the normal top of the VHS just has that. It's totally normal. Yeah, that looks good. Rewind. This is recorded in SP. Oh, that's fine. These Panasonics were never that great when it came to this. And I even recorded this tape on this VCR. So the fact that it's doing that little bit of static there is just kind of hilarious. But playback of this looks absolutely perfect. And let's just make sure that we don't have that weird shrieky noise before I put this back together one last time. That's working. Cool. It's quite amazing how fast this is going with the tape all threaded through there, isn't it? Okay, rewind. Here we go. Nice. Freaking nice. Yeah, so this spins so quickly as it gets near the end. And then what it does is, so it doesn't snap the tape when it hits the end stop, it slows way down, and now it's looking for the light beam. There we go. There's a beam of light that goes through, and as the leader passes, it actually shines through the tape, and it's able to stop before it hits the end there and yanks the tape right off the reel. Sometimes if you push channel up, down, it's like tracking. Does that actually affect when I'm in rewind here? Doesn't seem to. I think if you hit play though, this will be manual tracking. This thing has automatic tracking, of course. If we push plus or channel up, down, yep, there we go. That is absolutely tracking control. Let's see, play, pause. Where's pause? This pause here? Oh no, that's record. Darn it, I'm recording onto my tape. I guess there's no pause button on the front. Hitting the play button did not do anything. It doesn't stop the tape. Whoops, I just erased part of my tape. It's no big deal. I can just re-record it. Here, it's there. There we go. Picture's back. Yeah, I'm surprised that pushing the play button does not pause the VCR. Stop and eject, record, fast forward, and rewind. You got to use the remote, and I don't have the real remote, so I have to use this Harmony remote here. And there's pause. Looking pretty good. Play returns to playback. Pause should do a frame advance, I think. RetroTink does the jittering, so don't worry about that. On CRT, you wouldn't be doing that. Pause is pretty good though, all things considered. So you can do this like slow motion here, which is very jittery because of the RetroTink, but I'm not holding any buttons right now, and yet you can see it's just doing that slow playback. Is there another option on here? Let's see, position. Okay, you can look at how much tape you have left, so it knows it's a 120-minute tape, or it says 120 minutes remaining at least. There's a slow motion button on the remote. Oh, that just goes into this mode here, which I also got to by holding down the pause button. We can look at the display. You can change the sound between hi-fi, left, right, and normal audio if you want to pick what you want to have, but you can't combine the normal audio plus the hi-fi. Certain VCRs did allow that. That's really it for functions that I've programmed into here. There's like a commercial advanced thing, stuff like that. If we look at the menu though, what do we got on here? Repeat play, timestamp. That's that thing where it actually stamps the tape. That's kind of cool. That's an extra feature this thing has. It's sad because I bet you that capability is there in the lesser VCRs. It's just not enabled in the microcontroller. Remote warning, I have no idea what that means. Auto shut off. This allows you to control whether S-Video or SVHS is even on at all, or the ET mode. So I'm just gonna leave ET off, but SVHS on. If you accidentally record a regular tape like this with SVHS ET, it really won't play properly in a regular VCR. You'll see an image, but it will be all blown out and messed up because the luminance level it records the tape is far higher or something. I don't know how that works exactly. This is that commercial advanced thing, so we really don't need that. Playback, manual, auto, I don't know. I don't think these settings actually save when you unplug the VCR, so that's kind of annoying. That's all that's really in the menu. If we hit stop though, I think there's additional stuff that shows up. Let's hit stop. Oh yeah, all you get now is a channel thing as well. So you can just set up the tuner stuff. Cable DSS, digital satellite box, that's the IR blaster for controlling that. VCR Plus, this is that thing where you could look in your TV guide back in the day, type in a single code, and it would program the timer to record that specific show. It didn't require you to like go and put the start and end time. Although that's so easy on this. You know, I just realized there must be a button on the remote that I didn't program under this that brings up the programming menu, because I don't see it in the regular menu here. I'm sure I didn't even bother programming it because I was like, I'd never use this anyways. Stereo SAP mono, so this thing can decode stereo audio from the RF input, but nothing's gonna use that. And I'm sure what it does not do is it does not encode the stereo audio, the output of the modulator here. When you're playing a tape, you could not hook up a TV and get stereo sound. You would need to hook up the AV jacks. I'm just looking on the remote to see if I did add the programming button on here, but I don't think I did. I probably, when I set this up, I was just like, I'll never use that, so who cares? Just leave it off. Yeah, it's not on here. This VCR can actually record in LP mode, which is kind of cool. A lot of later VCRs couldn't. That's the middle speed, so this 2-hour tape would become a 4-hour tape. A lot of VCRs only gave you SP and SLP. That's the super long play and then standard play, and this thing has that middle LP mode. Kind of weird. I didn't even know this one could do it, to be honest. But yep, not much else you can do here. To get to the inputs though, you can just go down to the below channel 2, and that's nice. So you can do that from the front panel here. You can just push these buttons to get to the front inputs. Handy, because some VCRs, you need the remote to change even the input. Problem is, there's no button for the speed, because this thing's such a cheap thing. It'd be nice if it had a button to disable the SVHS, which it obviously could have supported, but also would have been nice if it had a button to change the speed, because I'm pretty sure, let's change the speed here. Let's change it to LP, and we'll eject the tape. I bet you if I unplug the power and plug it back in, it's probably gonna lose the LP setting there and go back to SP. Oh, where did my camera feed go? Hello, there we go, it's back. All right, let's turn this back on. Well, it stayed on line 1, that's cool. Play, yeah, SLP. Wait, what did I leave it in? Yeah, I left it in LP. So this thing defaults to SLP. So anytime I go to use it, I have to get the remote here to change the mode. Wait, what happened to LP? Didn't you all see LP? Was that because I was on a channel? Speed, SP, SLP. What changed here? I don't understand. I know I was on LP mode. Now VCRs that don't have LP as a setting in here can play back LP. But I don't understand. What did I do that changed this? There must be an audio button to change between these modes, because I don't see how to do that on here. No cassette, insert a cassette. Huh. Yeah, it was right here on this screen. When we were doing the different modes. Let's put a tape in. Maybe it won't let us pick without a tape. I don't know. Speed, SP, LP. What a weird thing that you can't pick LP when the tape is ejected. Let's eject that. And we'll push the display button here so we can... So it went back to SLP. I don't know. Very weird. Strange VCR this is. Anyhow, it goes without saying that VCRs like this are quite useful if you're trying to hook up an old 8-bit computer and you need an RF input and you don't have any kind of modern TVs, you only have things with composite video, well, you can use the antenna input on a VCR. It's just a really good way to get that working. And even if you find a broken VCR for like $5 or something, that's a great way to get an RF signal in and out. You can also get a signal out. So if you need to convert a composite video, like from a 8-bit computer, hook it up to an old TV using RF, an old broken VCR, or a working one for that matter, is a good way to do that. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Now I want to try something here, and I might be getting off into the weeds a little bit. As the tape is threaded around the head, as it's reading the tape, it's reading it one field at a time. So interlaced video has a frame, right? 30 frames per second here in North America. But there are 60 fields per second. So the video head, as it spins, is switching between two different heads. And that switching between the two heads has to happen 60 times a second, 60 fields per second. And that's all controlled by the, I don't know, PLL circuit that comes from the control track that's written and read by that head there. Well, these things here are adjustable tape guides, and they move the tape slightly around on the head just to make sure that when you have a tape that's commercially written and well calibrated, and I'm just gonna grab one like that, that you make sure that that switch point is completely calibrated. Now I don't want to show any copyrighted materials to make sure this does play. Okay, yeah, it's playing fine. We'll unplug that. Well, when you adjust these guides here by turning them with a screwdriver, I think, I don't really know how that works. You have to use an oscilloscope to make sure that you have that switch point correct. Well, I can see right down here, there are 2 test points. See that? These have little holes in the PCB that allow you to hook on. I'm pretty sure one is the RF signal coming from the video head assembly, and the other one is the switch point where you trigger. And this little metal grounding thing has a little tab on it, and I think that's where you would clip on for your ground lead. All right, so I just clipped onto that first one here, and there's probably the switch point. So yeah, 29.9. I'm sorry, I said it was 60 times a second. I guess it's 29 times a second. Unhook the other probe up here. Let's see if I can remember how to use this thing. Channel 2. An analog scope would do a much better job at actually displaying the video signal that we're just seeing here, which is just a bunch of noise. If we hit stop, that kind of goes away because it's the tape has no tension, so it's not up against the heads right now. And we hit play, then there we go, there's the RF signal again. And you can just sort of see there's a little bit of a bump there. That I think is that switch point. Let's hit fast forward. Yeah, things look a little bit more noisy there. What I need to do is grab my Rigol, which I think should do a better job at showing this. All right, and here's the Rigol displaying the same signal, and you can see it's much better. It's doing a much better job. And I'd say that it's slightly out of adjustment. I think this should be flat all the way across. How do I get this into a view that you can see it all the time? All right, there we go. Just kind of see it, make sure nothing is, oh, the ground lead fell off there. Just pop that back on. Okay. So yeah, this thing is a much better job than the Zoe at displaying what we need to see, and that's the video signal. Let's hit fast forward. Yeah, you can see it's changing quite a bit there. Where's the pause button on the remote? That is pause. What does that do? Yeah, I mean, I don't think that matters. And we hit frame advance, and it looks like that. Okay, whatever. Hit play again. I'm using a commercially recorded tape because I know that it's recorded properly, or I hope it is at least. Well, one thing we can kind of see is that this one looks nice and flat, but the other one, it doesn't. Now, it could be the heads are worn on this, like one set of the heads. What I should do is pop this tape out, and let's pop in the one I recorded on this deck, which was this one here. And looking at the tape I recorded in this VCR, you know, we're also seeing that it looks a little different. Like this, that signal just seems higher than that one for some reason. But let's go back to the pre-recorded tape. I think this one here adjusts this side, and this one is adjusted by this side. That's too much. Can zoom in a little bit on that side here. This is this one. So I'm just going to adjust it for the highest possible setting. So like there. And we'll move this over to that side, which is this one. Yeah, like that. Yep, I don't know. That's probably as good as you can get. I have a feeling though that the video signal should be the same. That was funny. Wonder if there was like a little dropout on the tape there. Let's go backwards here. I think the amplitude while this is low should be the same as while it's high. So this is one field and that's the other field. I think it's like two different sets of heads. So it definitely seems when this is high, the amplitude there doesn't look as good. Although, what happened here? Did a probe fall off? Could be just normal video signal activity. I'm gonna go back to the beginning of the tape here. It's nice there's no more shrieking anymore. There we go. I think there was just nothing recorded at the beginning there, which is why we didn't see anything. And you can see the little dropouts. See the little, those little things, those are dropouts in the tape, just evident here. So I bet you there's some text on screen right now. Probably a warning message or something. All right, time-live video. Whoa, look how bad quality that looks. Let's go back to that text that I think was there. Some kind of warning text or something, Warner Brothers. Is that the text? Yeah, I guess so. That's the text right there. Look at that. You can see it showing up. Interesting. You see how things are changing on here? Well, one thing we can see is that going backwards on the rewind now looks good. There's no static on it or anything. How about fast forwarding? Well, that looks good too. All right, now, of course, because I recorded it in this VCR, it's gonna have a little bit of this going on here and here. I'd need to remake this tape, which is fine. I just obviously did it from my computer. Let's see how this looks though, fast forward and rewinding. Wow, that static is gone. It was definitely on this tape, rewinding. We'd have that static bar there, and that is gone. That's cool. Let's try another commercial tape here. Here's a copy of Top Gun. Hopefully this was recorded properly. It's old, so it's gonna have some dropouts and stuff on it as well. It's been played a million times, but let's see how the video signal looks. Oh yeah, pretty good. It's, again, a little bit lower than the other head, so I'm feeling there's a little bit of wear on this VCR just from the use, but I don't see any major issues here. I mean, maybe that could look a little bit better. Let's see if rewinding here actually looks good. I mean, other than the jittery, yeah. No static, just a bit of dropout, so that looks good. And we'll hit play, or fast forward. Picture looks great as well. Right, so let me just tweak on this one a little bit. So just try to, just let me flatten this off a little bit. I think it's a little bit better, maybe. Make sure it still looks good. Fast forward, rewind. Yep, totally fine. All right, well, that's the first time I've ever done any kind of adjustment like that ever in my life. Never done anything like that. Let's just rewind this tape. I don't like to store my tapes when they're not all the way rewound. All right, well, this camera just ran out of battery. Yeah, even though it's plugged into power, it still drains the battery ever so slowly. So over a bunch of time, it does run out. That's the first time I've ever done any kind of adjustment like that in my life. And thank you, 12 Volt Vids, for making lots of videos about doing that stuff. 12 Volt Vids uses an analog scope, so I think this Rigol does the trick, but we could see here that the Zoe was absolutely, completely inadequate for doing that adjustment. Just not good enough. Analog scopes would be best, and then these intensity graded display ones like the Rigol are probably the next best thing. And I think I got this thing dialed in pretty good. It was slightly out of adjustment in my book. Probably was like that from the factory, because obviously this thing still did play tapes perfectly well without any kind of issue. It just wasn't as good as it could have been. So that is going to be it for this video. I'm just going to put this thing back together, and I think it's going to go back into service. I'll just take the VCR I had over there on top of the TV out, which was just a lesser VCR, not Super VHS, and put this one back. And hopefully this one is working well. What I'll probably do is just play some movies and stuff, let them play all the way through, and it should rewind. And if it's rewound when I go to take the tape out and not just power it off, then I know that it worked and didn't have a problem with these sensors not working. And I'm glad I finally figured out what to lubricate when it comes to that noise, fast forwarding and rewinding. I think I have at least one other Panasonic VCR that has noise for that as well. So I'll just need to go and lubricate that VCR as well by taking it totally apart, which is kind of lame, but hey, there you go. Again, huge thanks to 12 Volt Vids for making the video on this specific problem with the end stop and the cracked solder joints. I will link to that video and 12 Volt Vids channel in the description below, so definitely check that out if you're into fixing this stuff. He knows way more about all this than I do when it comes to these VCRs, that he actually did this for a living, repairing TVs and VCRs. So unlike me, who was just a hobbyist, you could talk to someone who actually really got paid to do this. So that's pretty cool. And if you enjoyed me mucking around inside this VCR, then a thumbs up. If you didn't, you know what to do. If you do work on one of these VCRs yourself, just make sure you do it safely and don't touch the power supply and all that stuff. It is dangerous, high voltage mains and all that good stuff. And I think that's going to be that. So thanks to my patrons, names are scrolled beside the screen, and stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.